public health through guidance on health research, including ethics, medical product development, and safety. CIOMS, as I mentioned, it's an international non-government, non-profit organization by the WHO and the UNESCO in 1949, and it represents a substantial proportion of the biomedical scientific community through its member organizations. It has a total of 40 members, which are classified as international, national, and associate members. A brief description of how it was formed, a timeline about its history and making. So it was formed in 1948. Actually, there was an agreement between WHO and UNESCO for the establishment of a permanent council for coordination of international medical congresses. So various medical bodies which were there, there was agreement between these two. Then in 1949, the council was formally constituted in Brussels, and in 1952, it was named as CIOMS. Then in 1959, Vienna meeting on controlled clinical trials took place to discuss the principles, organization, and scope of controlled clinical trials, which must be carried out if new methods or preparations used for the treatment of diseases are to be accurately assessed clinically. Right. So it was basically, it is also known as the Vienna Convention, and you must have heard about it. And it was a big meeting on the control of clinical trials. Then in 1977, launch of ethics of research involving humans. We'll discuss about it further. Then in 1982, it was adopted by UN. Of the CIOMS medical ethics for prisoners. Then in 1993, start of CIOMS focus on PV and reporting of adverse drug reactions. This is just a snippet, so we'll discuss in detail as we go forward. In 2016, the new CIOMS ethical guidelines for health-related research, which involved humans. So this is the entire timeline about CIOMS. So just to present some more details around it. In 1948, UNESCO and WHO talked about the possibility of establishing an organization which would facilitate further coordination in planning and timing of international medical congresses. Right. So the council was formally constituted and jointly sponsored in Brussels in 1949. Then consequently in 52, the name of this council, it was changed to CIOMS, its current name. Right, and its statutes, various statutes were put in place and revised. Then at the end of 1950s, CIOMS organized a meeting under the joint auspices of both the parties, that is UNESCO and WHO, to discuss the principles, organization, and scope of controlled clinical trials, which must be carried out if new methods or preparations are to be accurately assessed. Then in 1966, various changes were made, some of which were as part of economic growth and the need of the economy at that time. Thus, the council, it was forced to discontinue its grants to young scientists and to curtail its financial assistance to member organizations. Therefore, at that time, economic grants were taken off. So initially, it was giving grant, but it was eventually taken off. Then in 1986, CIOMS set up its first working group on pharmacovigilance, a working group on international reporting of adverse drug reactions to explore the means of coordinating and standardizing the international adverse drug reporting by PV manufacturers or pharmaceutical manufacturers to regulatory authorities. Its agenda was therefore limited to post-marketing reporting, and there was no talk about how to do it in clinical trials, but only about post-marketing reporting occurring in one country and which the pharmaceutical industry should report to regulatory authorities. Right. So that was the first working group on PV in 1986. Then, based on the initial report of the working group, which was published next year in 1987, the final report of CIOMS Working Group 1, which is the International Reporting of Adverse Reactions, was published in 1990. In 92, the CIOMS Working Group 2 report, International Reporting on Periodic Drug Safety Updates and Summaries, was published. So in 92, there was this second working group on periodic drug safety updates. Then in 2016, CIOMS joined the ICH. So ICH is another organization. We'll talk about it in further detail later in the session. So just to for your understanding, in 2016, CIOMS joined ICH as an observer. So ICH is bringing together the regulatory authorities and pharmaceutical industries to discuss scientific and technical aspects of drug registration. Basically, it deals with that. So ICH guidelines form part of official technical requirements for authorization of medicines. Historically, several CIOMS PV guidelines served as the basis for ICH. So CIOMS, obviously, it was a forerunner of all of these bodies. So CIOMS guidelines were used as a basis for ICH guidelines. So ICH came later. So that's how it is set up, right? So just for your understanding. What does CIOMS do? Basically, CIOMS coordinates programs devised to run for many years to address the following key areas of biomedicine. The first is bioethics, then health policy, ethics, and human values, which is an international dialogue. So it's a document that was published by CIOMS. Then drug development and use, and finally international nomenclature of disease. So all of these programs of CIOMS, they were devised to run this. Why is it important for TB? So CIOMS has run a program focusing on drug safety since early 1980s, which incorporates distinct working groups. In addition, CIOMS was involved in publishing an initiative to standardize the use of medical terms associated with adverse drug reactions. However, this has not been widely accepted in TB practice. CIOMS guidelines are individually published in paperback book form, available on payment to CIOMS. So basically, if you want it's just for your understanding, although this data is available on the internet as well. So if you want to know more about it, you can read about it online. Right. So some have become obsolete or superseded by other published guidelines. However, some are still there, right? So some of the CIOMS guidelines, such as CIOMS 3, CIOMS 5, and CIOMS 8. So we'll read about it as we go along. They have been hugely influential in formulating direction in which PV practice worldwide has evolved, right? So CIOMS guidelines form the basis, form the structure of PV guidelines. Yeah, so working groups, we have been talking about various CIOMS working groups. So a broad range of topics are covered by the CIOMS group, right? So that was the motive also to form these working groups, because TV is vast and it's not possible for one body within CIOM to actually cater to all of these in such detail, right? So that is why various working groups were formed. Senior scientists from regulatory authorities, pharmaceutical industry, and academia joined together in order to develop consensus guidelines within areas such as international reporting of ADRs via CIOMS 1 reporting form. So this structure was later embedded in the ICH guidelines also, because ICH have the basis of CIOMS only, right? So ICH E2B guidelines, they are the most widely followed for submissions of individual case reports. So CIOMS 1 form structure was incorporated into ICH. Right. So other areas include periodic drug safety update summaries, development safety update reports, core clinical safety information on drugs, terminology of various ADRs, standardized med-drug queries, and pharmacogenetics. So we'll talk about it as we go along. So there have also been joint working groups together with WHO covering drug development research and PD in resource-limited countries, and vaccine pharmacovigilance. CIOMS Working Group 1 is basically on the international reporting of ADRs. it gave us the CIOMS 1 form. So it served as a model for the development of ICH guidelines E2A. We'll discuss what these guidelines are. Then CIOMS Working Group 2 international reporting on the periodic safety update reports, or periodic PSURs, as you know. Then CIOMS Working Group 3 guidelines preparing core clinical safety information, CCSI. What is CCSI? Can anybody tell me, if anybody knows? We talked about it in one of the previous sessions. See, can anybody tell me what CCSI, in which document can CCSI be found? CCSI is a part of which document? Okay, all right. So please find out the answer, and let me know by next session. Next is CIOMS Working Group 4, benefit risk balance for marketed drugs. Evaluating safety signals is now obsolete, basically. Yeah, just to say, like, benefit risk balance is the mainstay, right? So we in context we say benefit risk is the most important, right? So CIOMS Working Group 5, current challenges in field, which is a pragmatic approach. Then various CIOMS Working Group 3 and 5 guidelines were used in core safety information and pre-approval, which is the DCSI, Development Core Safety. Similarly, Working Group 6, Management of Safety Information for Clinical Trials. Working Group 8 is on signal detection. Then 9 on risk minimization. Working Group 10 talks about meta-analysis. Working Group 11 on patient involvement, and 12 of benefit risk balance. And finally, there was also working group for vaccine pharmacovigilance, and also working group on vaccine safety. So these are all the working groups. It's just a snippet of all of the working groups, right, from CIOMS 1 to CIOMS 10, and then CIOMS SMQ implementation working group, CIOMS working group to vaccine safety. I'll just give you 1 minute to go through this table quickly. If there are any questions on this, any aspects, you can ask right now also, because I think we'll talk about it right now. All right. So as I mentioned previously, CIOMS PV guidelines, they served as a basis for several ICH guidelines, right? So some examples of such a direct basis, direct relationship with CIOMS Working Group 1 and 2, basically. They paved the way for ICH E2A guidelines, which is on clinical safety data management, definitions and standard for expedited. You won't understand in much detail as of now, because you've not, I think, dealt yet with any of the ICSRs guidelines and so on. So just know, this is for your knowledge, that CIOMS Working Group 1 and 2 led to ICH E2A guidelines. Then CIOMS 1A led to ICH E2B guideline, which is clinical safety data management, data elements for transmission of ICSRs, which is basically deals with the transmission and submission of ICSRs. Then next is Working Group 2 and 3. They led to ICH E2C guidelines, which is on clinical safety data management, the PBERS, the periodic benefit risk evaluation reports, or PSURs. Then working group 5 recommendations were used for ICH E2D, which is post-approval safety management, right? Then working group 8, you could say ICH E2F, which is for DSURs. Right. So this is the CIOMS reporting form, which was an outcome, a direct outcome of the CIOMS working group 1. So it served as a minimum standard for reporting of adverse drug reaction of licensed drugs, right? So whatever adverse drug reactions were reported to the health authority, they had to be reported in this form. So this is the format that we still use for reporting in the various European regions, or maybe if it has to be reported in the EU. So CIOMS format is still used. It is accessible on the CIOMS homepage. And based on this CIOMS form, various national health authorities have developed their own templates of reporting to their regulatory authorities. So as you can see in this form, on the top, it mentions suspect adverse reaction report. So only suspected adverse reactions. Suspected adverse reactions means reactions which have a plausible causality. Plausible causality as in if there is a doubtful, or if there is a relationship that cannot be ruled out with that drug, then it is called a suspected adverse reaction, right? So various information is presented, like patient initials, country, date of birth, age, sex, uh, reaction onset date, then what are the seriousness criteria, if any. Then second part says suspect drug information. So it talks about the drug of our drug, that is the suspect drug, the daily dose, the route of administration, indication for use, therapy dates, therapy duration, and so on. Right. On the right hand side, if you see the numbers 20 and 21, so it says did reaction abate after stopping drug. So what does it mean? In other words, can anyone tell me what does this mean? Did reaction abate after stopping drug?
Did the side effects stop when you stop giving the drug?
Yeah, that's what it's written, right? What it is called in TV terms. Can you tell me? There's another name for it. D challenge. Have you heard of D challenge? We talked about D challenge. Yes or no? Or don't remember?
I don't. So last class I wasn't there.
Okay. Anybody who was there in the previous sessions? Are you aware about D challenge? Positive D challenge, negative D challenge, re-challenge, positive re-challenge, negative re-challenge. Does it ring bell?
So not able to exactly recall. Sorry.
Okay, so that's I don't know. Okay, let's move on then. It's better, I think, if you can go through these details from previous session. I think they are shared with you already. If not, you can ask for the previous session slides and go through them, please.